the biology really informs the theological elements of sex. As we got into it, as we started learning the church teaching, it was like, wow, this is amazing, but hold up. We still have these really basic practical questions, like how do you actually experience an orgasm? How do you learn to do that? I'm experiencing pain. What does that mean? Who do I talk to? What do I need to do about this? If I told you you're gonna have sex tonight, what thoughts just went off in your brain? Sex should never, ever be painful. Orgasm is a skill. It is a skill that you need to learn how to do. The reason why desire decreases over the course of a marriage is because
Hey, before we jump in, if you have not signed up yet for the presence text, I really need you to do that today because I created this thing and I'm still a little bit obsessed with it myself. Here's the deal. You and I both know that we can listen to an incredible podcast episode or read the most beautiful thing and feel completely moved by it. But then when we walk back into our lives and our kids need something or dinner needs to happen, that feeling is just gone. And what I kept thinking was that what we actually need isn't more content to consume. It's something that finds us inside the ordinary moments we're already living in and just reminds us to be present for them. So 3 times a week, I send a short text right to your phone, not an email, not a notification, just a text that drops into your real day and gently reorients you toward what actually matters. That's the whole thing. And I think it works precisely because it meets you where you already are. The first month is completely free with code CWP, and then it's just $5 a month, you guys, just $5. And you can cancel at any time, no questions asked. So go to catholicwoman.co/presence. The link will be in the show notes, but that's catholicwoman.co/presence and use the code CWP to make it free. I can't wait to see you inside. I absolutely love this. It has changed my life, and I can't wait to hopefully change yours too. You're listening to the Catholic Women Podcast, the show where we as Catholic women navigate the modern world together. I'm your host, Marie Hansen. Welcome back, friends, or welcome for the first time if it's your first time listening to the show. And I'm sure if you saw today's episode title, you know there's going to be a mature content warning, but I still, as a mom, like to give a little mature content warning for today's episode. This is such a needed conversation, especially for all the married women and moms. I am just very excited for this conversation today, but that said, it's definitely not for little ears to hear. So if you have kids around, make sure you pop in earbuds or listen at a time when it's just some you time. So I am very excited for this chat. Let me introduce you to Ellen. Ellen is a Catholic sex and intimacy coach and host of the Reclaiming Catholic Intimacy podcast. Through her work, she helps Catholic wives learn to actually desire and enjoy sex and intimacy in a way that is completely in line with Catholic teaching. She holds a certificate in the fundamentals of sex therapy from Buehler Institute and is in pursuit of her Master's of Sacred Arts in Theology of the Body and the New Evangelization through Pontifex University. So Ellen, welcome to the show.
thank you so much for having me. Isn't that master's degree name a mouthful? It's so ridiculous. It's so long.
I know. I love it. It's going to be fun to write on things I have my master's in.
And yeah, it's just like, it's like so long. It's not just a master's. It's a master's of sacred arts in theology of the body and the new evangel. It's just fun. It cracks me up every time.
But it's important. Those are very, very unique things to they're very unique angles to learn about something from. So I think it's, it's a really, really unique master. So I love it. So fun. Well, I guess let's talk a little bit about you before we dive into the meat of today's episode. Who's Ellen and how did you get into the work that you got into?
Absolutely. So my name's Ellen, and basically when my husband and I first got married, we hit rock bottom almost immediately, and it was all due to our lack of formation and misunderstanding in what the church actually teaches about sex and intimacy and how good and beautiful it is. We started off on birth control. We started off with just no understanding of just the beautiful theological elements that are present in two becoming one and husband and wife being able to image the divine Trinitarian love that's present in the Trinity. All of these like crazy, amazing concepts. We didn't understand any of them. And we were just trying to navigate sex and intimacy like they do in the secular world. And yeah, you can really understand why everyone is so, just struggles so much with sex and intimacy. And it's just such a big issue because when we have that lack of formation, when we don't understand the truths and the goodness and the beauty, it becomes really difficult, very impossible to actually live out a beautiful, unitive married life. And so my husband and I, the first 6 months of our marriage, we kind of joke that they were just the worst 6 months. We did not have like a honeymoon period like a lot of people
Yeah.
have or talk about. And I would say now, as we're rounding out to 9 years of marriage, our marriage is so much better. Our sex life is so much more incredible than we could have even imagined. And it's very true that it only gets better. And it gets better as you embrace more and more how amazing the church's teaching is. But as we got into it, as we started learning the church teaching, it was like, wow, this is amazing. Theology of the body is amazing. This is all so good. But hold up, we still have these really basic practical questions like, how do you actually experience an orgasm? How do you learn to do that? I'm experiencing pain. What does that mean? Who do I talk to? What do I need to do about this? And I just noticed there was this gaping hole of practical sex ed for married Catholic women. And that is the hole that I fill with Reclaiming Catholic Intimacy and the programs that I do and the podcast that I host.
I love that. I love that your experience has kind of turned into your ministry, and that's beautiful. And I will say you're filling such an important hole because there are Christian sex therapists out there, but
Yes.
a lot of them are not in line with Catholic teaching. So let's actually lay some groundwork. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are familiar with Catholic teaching, but it's like you said, it's not talked about a ton. So let's talk about what the church says about sex and marriage. What is allowed, what is not allowed, and not necessarily like specifics, but like what is there like, because they're not specific, which is kind of the good thing and the bad thing at the same time. But like, what does the church say about how and when, where, just the basic overview about sex and marriage?
Absolutely. So the biggest part about sex and intimacy in marriage is that the man's semen is designed to go into the woman's vagina, right? So that is like kind of that big overarching rule, is that we're recognizing that we are always coming to the act with the intention of fully completing the act. That is its natural design, and we never want to mess with that natural design. Pope Paul VI in Humanae Vitae gave us the really clear language of the inseparability principle of we cannot separate the unitive and the procreative elements of sex. And these are, so we have in the unitive side, we have the physical unity. We see this, the two bodies are coming together, but then there's also a deeper spiritual and a chemical unity that happens when two people experience an orgasm. There are chemicals that go off in the brain that actually bond them to each other on a deeper level. Like there's so much beauty to the biology, really informs the theological elements of sex so much. And I could totally nerd out on it forever, but we'll keep moving on. We'll press on. But when we look at the that unitive, that physical unity, if we take away that physical unity and we make it only a procreative act, we can very clearly see that it is not sex. And this is the case of something like IVF. It is obvious, right? No one can argue that IVF is not sex. It does not include sex, right? IUI is not sex, right? It's a procreative act. And so Pope Paul VI and the church actually has historically taught that we cannot separate these things. Pope Paul VI just gave us very clear language for it, which is so nice in Humanae Vitae. So we cannot separate these things. So now if we look at it from the flip side, if we try to take away the procreative element and leave just the unitive element, that is the case of using contraception. So pulling out barrier methods, permanent sterilization, birth control, the shot. I actually don't even think that they sell the shot. Like I think the Depo-Provera is out now, but there used to be a shot.
They're definitely getting away from it. Yes.
Yeah. There were patches, right? Like there's all of those things are essentially trying to remove that procreative element. And now this is where there's kind of confusion, right? Of, well, it's still sex, but it's not. And because we can see it so clearly from the flip side, when we take the unitive element out and make it just a procreative act, we see that it is clearly not sex. We can then understand that on the deeper spiritual level, it is no longer sex. It's no longer what sex was designed from the beginning to be, which is an opportunity to fully give yourself as a self-gift to the other. And in that self-gift, receive the other person into, ladies, into yourself and unite on this deeply human level. This is the most human act that we can do. Like it on this kind of metaphysical level, it's the very, very human act to be able to unite like this, because man and woman were created in the image of God, and God is a trinity of love. Like it's this outpouring of love that is cycling between the three persons in the Trinity. And in coming together in sex, like we are imaging that in a way. And it's just so beautiful. So that's kind of that's the big overarching rule, and where we kind of can understand, like, we can't pull out, we can't use contraception. And then on the flip side, it doesn't make sense to do things like IVF or IUI and things like that. And then the second one that I like to talk about on this kind of grander scale level of like, what does the church teach, is, again, we're letting the biology inform the theology here. And sexual arousal has a purpose to physically prepare the body for sex. So the man's penis, we see it super obviously, right? It becomes erect. It usually gets longer or wider, or maybe a little bit of both. The female body also changes, and this is what a lot of people don't understand. The vaginal canal lengthens so that there's actually room for the penis, which has gotten longer and bigger, right? And the
Yes.
and the vaginal canal, the vaginal opening widens, again, to receive the man's penis. If the woman's body, and we might get into this a little bit more, if we don't have enough foreplay and the woman's body isn't ready for it, that's a big problem. But if we go back to sexual arousal is designed for the sexual act, and therefore it does not make sense to seek out sexual arousal intentionally without the intention of completing the sexual act. And so this is where there's a lot of questions about, like, how far is too far when we're trying to avoid pregnancy? And it's like, too far is if you are intentionally seeking out sexual arousal, right? There's nothing wrong with feeling sexual arousal. It's if we then follow that sexual arousal and go further in the activity that we're doing, or go try to start making out or touching, heavy petting and things like that, and we're like, we have no intention of completing the act. It frustrates the natural design of sexual desire. Sexual arousal. Yeah. And so we don't want to be doing that. So those are like the big church teaching rules around it.
That's so helpful. That already answered so many questions for so many people, I think, myself included. So I want to talk about mostly the women today. That was really, really helpful because, and like you said, like how her body changes, and because this show is mostly for women, but I think it's women just even in the non-Catholic world, I feel like have a harder time with sex in general, just because, well, one reason I think is everything's internal for women, whereas men, obviously this is an external organ. So I think just you can't see it. It's hidden. And so I feel like it almost feels like we shouldn't talk about that. I don't know. But I know that women especially struggle, married women, especially after having kids, really struggle with desiring sex. Now, I know a lot of people have that honeymoon phase. I know you said you didn't, but that will wear off for people eventually. And I know that eventually it can become a struggle to desire sex. So why do people struggle with this so much, particularly women? And what can they do about it?
Absolutely. So I want to talk first about that honeymoon phase, because a lot of people are like, this honeymoon phase, this is the normal. This is how it should always be. And the thing is, it could be. But what is going on in that honeymoon phase, and we're just going to go kind of from a typical example. So take what makes sense for you, adjust it for your own situation if you need to. But a typical example is a man and a woman did not have sex prior to marriage. They got married, and sex is this new and very exciting thing. That means that every time that she thinks about sex, it is exciting. She is looking forward to it. She can't wait for it. She can't wait to try something new. Maybe things aren't working, but she's excited to, like, oh, that's fine. We're figuring it out. We're trying. We're going to do something new. This is so exciting and good. all of her thoughts about sex are very, very positive. They're very excited. They're very good. And therefore, when the opportunity for sex arises, she's already primed in her brain to be excited and looking forward to it and being open to it because she's been thinking about being excited and open and primed for it all day, all week, basically any thought about sex is positive. Now, we get a couple of years in, things aren't working. We still haven't learned how to orgasm. Now we have kids. Now it's hard to figure out a time to have sex. We're tired and we've got a lot of responsibilities. Now our thoughts about sex are, right? Just that. It's just
almost
that,
like a
right?
chore, yes.
Or they're even more negative than that. Oh, it's just for him. He only receives the pleasure. I don't get anything out of this. I'm just doing it because I'm supposed to. This is what a good Catholic wife does. Actually, it kind of hurts. I feel used during the act. Right? Any number of those thoughts. All of those thoughts are not going to prime us for being interested in sex. Actually, they're doing the exact opposite. So on a super broad basic level, the reason why desire decreases over the course of a marriage is probably because you're not actually having sex that is worth desiring. And therefore, your thoughts about sex have just slowly gone more and more negative. And so, of course, it makes sense. If there's something that you're dreading doing, of course, you're not going to be excited to do it. I hate cleaning the bathroom. I don't like doing it. I have some very negative thoughts about cleaning the bathroom. It's gross and it's boring and blah, 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 right? So obviously when it comes time for me to clean the bathroom, I am not jumping up and down and so excited to do it, right? But I love reading a book and all my thoughts are so positive about reading a book. And so when I have that 20 minutes to sit down and read, I'm like, this is great. I'm so excited. I got my cup of tea. I'm going to sit down and read it, right? So one of the things that we need to do, ladies, is just take a litmus test on when you think about sex. And you can just do this right now. If I told you you're going to have sex tonight, what thoughts just went off in your brain, right? Were they excited or were they mostly negative? And if they're mostly negative, then we want to start transforming those thoughts into more positive thoughts. And this is kind of a double-edged sword because we also want to address sex and make sure it's something that we're actually enjoying. But we've got to work both sides. We've got to make sure that our thoughts are positive about it, as well as the actual experience of it.
That's really, really important. And I didn't even realize how much your thoughts really drive that and how they shift so much over the years, just gradually, shifts here and there. And I mean, I don't know. For me, it really changed when I'm exhausted now with kids. That newborn phase is such a drastic change in your life when you have your first kid that I think slowly over time your thoughts shift after that. So that's really, really interesting. I do want to talk also about, and you just briefly mentioned this, the actual logistics of making sure sex is enjoyable physically. So emotionally, mentally is one thing, but then physically is another. And I know that this can actually be something that kind of ruins the honeymoon phase for people too, is if it really hurts right away and then your body is tensing up and that makes it worse. And I know there's just so many women, I see, in Catholic groups, I feel like sex issues are one of the biggest issues I see. So
I see
there's
them come
so
up
many,
a lot, yeah.
Yes. And it's weird to talk about. I think people don't want to talk about it with their friends or their moms or their sisters. So I'm so glad you have a space to do that. So let's talk about the physical aspect. And then I kind of want to bring it back into how we can unite the two to actually make it a really good experience overall. So physically, what are some things that women can do to help prepare her body, or what should she do when she's encountering pain? And, what about hormones? How do they play a role in this? Just talk to me about what the physical picture looks like for women.
Absolutely. So first off, ladies, if foreplay is not a standard part of having sex, then that's why you're struggling. That's why it's not great. Like I said earlier, sexual arousal prepares the body for sex. The man's body typically is able to be ready for sex in under a minute. The woman's body, on average, is 10 to 20 minutes. There's a very big difference there. So sometimes this is simply educating your husband in how female body, biology works and how arousal works for the female body and saying, look, it's not that I just want foreplay and you just don't want it. Is that my body actually physically needs it in order for my body to be ready for sex to be comfortable, for sex to even have a chance of being pleasurable. Like, I actually need 10 to 20 minutes of foreplay. Some women's bodies need more. And one of the things that the women that I work closely with in my 8-week group coaching program, a lot of times we're looking at needing longer amounts of time, 45 minutes to an hour of foreplay, simply because of a lot of negative thoughts around sex and just really needing to kind of break through these walls that we've built up. And so if that's you, if you have a lot of walls around sex, if sex is just like a duty checkbox for you and it's not enjoyable at all, you might need even more time. Because in order to have intercourse, the female body needs to open to receive. That's biologically what we are doing. And so if we biologically need to do that, then we also psychologically need to do that. So we also, that foreplay can be a very helpful time to work on our own thoughts about opening up and receiving and loving our spouse and being a self-gift and things like that. I talk about when it comes to orgasm is not something that you get, it's something that you receive. So we actually have to learn to receive the pleasure that is inherent in foreplay and intercourse. And
Interesting.
that learning to receive of the physical pleasure is a school of learning to receive love from the Father. Like, that's how deep sex and intimacy is, and how, like, our relationship with our husband. The whole point of marriage is to teach us how to be in relationship with God, is to show us how much God loves us and the relationship he wants to have with us. All throughout Scripture, especially throughout the Old Testament, there is so much marital imagery. That God is married, Israel is his spouse, right? And and you see it like in Hosea, we've got the direct imagery of the prostitute that is like, Israel is this prostitute who's not faithful to her husband. And that marital imagery, like, we can help that can inform our own marriages as well, in like, this is how God wants us to learn how to love him, in this total surrender, total self-gift. And for us ladies, we get a little bonus. It gets a little bit easier because we are a feminine body. And so our role in sex is a role of receptivity. And that is also our role with God, is a role of receptivity. So anyway, foreplay, absolutely necessary. It is not a bonus. It is not an add-on. It's not a if we have time. Like, if you don't have time for foreplay, you don't have time for sex. Like, if you are not consistently enjoying sex, and this might be something you need to just like straight up talk to your husband about. If you are not consistently enjoying sex, you cannot have a quickie. It's not an option in your marriage. Until you are at a point that you are consistently enjoying sex, quickies are off the table. Like, just literally not an option, because it is a justice issue. John Paul II, when he was still Bishop of Krakow, when he wrote Love and Responsibility as Karol Wojtyła, he explained that if one spouse is not receiving the pleasure, and that's typically the woman, because the man's pleasure is inherently connected to that procreative element of sex. Like, his orgasm comes with ejaculation, so they really go together. But it's typically the woman who might not receive that pleasure. He called it a justice issue. It is an issue of justice if she is not receiving that pleasure, right? So ladies, this is just. It is just to talk to your husband about this and say, hey, I'm not actually enjoying this act. We gotta change things. We gotta try some new things. We gotta adjust the way that we've been approaching this act.
Okay, I have to tell you about something my girls are completely obsessed with right now, because if you have little ones and you have not found Bono the Good Boy yet, you are missing out, and I need to fix that for you immediately. So you know how Bluey works. It's genuinely good content and your kids love it, and it actually makes them think and feel things in a way that really surprises you. Well, Bono the Good Boy is that, but centered entirely around Christ. It follows Jesus through the Gospels with this completely lovable dog named Bono, told in 5-minute rhyming episodes with fun sound effects that are absolutely perfect for car rides, quiet time, arts and crafts. Honestly, anything where you need something playing in the background that isn't rotting their brains. And as a music teacher, I absolutely love the rhyming. That is just so good for their development. So anyway, had to share that. But here's what I love about it most. It's the Bible stories because they are the real deal. They're not watered down and they're not sanitized into something unrecognizable. They're just told in a way that kids can genuinely understand and enjoy. And I cannot tell you how many times my girls have finished an episode and asked me a question about Jesus that totally stopped me in my tracks. The kind of question that tells you something actually landed and it took root, and that, that's just worth everything to me as their mom. So you can find Bono the Good Boy wherever you get your podcasts, and I especially want to point you towards FIO. It's a free Catholic streaming app with thousands of hours of Catholic content, including Bono the Good Boy and the Catholic Woman podcast, and they actually pay their creators by the stream, so every listen genuinely matters. It's essentially the Catholic Spotify. So links to FIO, Apple, and Spotify will all be in the show notes, and if you love it, remember to follow, review, and share the show with your friends, because that's the best way for free you can help a podcast out. You know how sometimes a single image can stop you, soften you, almost open a window in your heart? Hannah Briley, owner of Mangio Arts, believes that's no accident, because it's through our hearts that we encounter beauty, and beauty is the doorway to God, a doorway that invites us into conversion time and time again. That's why the art we place in our home matters. We all need those small daily encounters with Christ, glimpses of Him woven right into the rhythm of our everyday life. From beautiful images of Our Lady, visual reflections on Christ and the saints, to scenes that reflect holiness of everyday life, Hannah Briley pours prayer and intentionality into each art piece created. But she also knows that beauty is personal, which is why Mangio Arts offers custom commissions as well, such as family portraits, pet portraits, house paintings, custom saint devotions, and so much more. Know a couple who would love their wedding photo transformed into one-of-a-kind art? Or a family moving to a new home who wants to capture the memories of a place they leave behind? Mangio Arts can capture those moments for you in a beautiful, irreplaceable work of art. Whether in wood burning, watercolor, or charcoal, each piece is handcrafted to be cherished for years to come. If you're longing to surround your family with art that nourishes the soul, shop Mangio Arts store on Etsy and use the code WOMANPODCAST15 for 15% off your order. You can also support Hannah by following her on social media at Mangio Arts. That's MANGIO Arts, where you can find additional links for commission requests and exclusive access to deals and upcoming events through her monthly newsletter. She looks forward to sharing her artwork with you, and she hopes she can bring unique beauty into your home. There's a moment many of us know well. Staring at our closet in the early morning light before Mass, choosing an outfit that reflects not just our taste, but our faith. Beauty, yes, but also reverence. A way of presenting ourselves that feels aligned with who God calls us to be. If you've been looking for clothing that embodies a contemporary, feminine, and modest style, you're going to love Contemporary Saints. They're a Catholic family-owned boutique offering thoughtfully chosen pieces made with sustainable fabrics, named after saints, and designed to help you feel confident and aligned with who God calls you to be without compromising quality or style. Their motto says it perfectly: modestly you. A boutique that understands that modesty has a different meaning to everyone. And the best part? They make it easy to begin. Enjoy free U.S. shipping on orders over $70 or a flat rate of $5 for U.S. shipping and $10 for international shipping. Plus, if you subscribe to their emails, you'll receive 15% off your purchase as a little welcome gift. Visit contemporarysaints.com and discover modest fashion that feels like home. Contemporary Saints. Modestly you. Wow, I didn't realize he said it was a justice issue, which is crazy.
That's a big deal.
Yes.
That's big language.
That is. So that makes you realize you deserve it just as much as your husband does. which I think, like in theory, we're like, yeah, but then it comes, it comes time to get down to the act and you're like, nah, never mind. Before I want to talk more about like pain and addressing physical issues, but something you said reminded me of things I've seen online. So there are certain influencers I've seen who are like, yeah, like, you might feel like you don't really want sex, but you should just do it anyway because by the end, you're going to be happy you did. What's your take on that mentality of like, it is a gift. Obviously, it's a gift to your spouse, but kind of doing it as, I don't know, almost a responsibility, but whereas they say that in the end, you'll always enjoy it. I don't know. I've just like had mixed opinions on those kind of statements
Yeah.
I've seen.
I think that statement very much, it's extremely individual. It only
Mhm.
really works if you enjoy sex.
Mhm.
Because what that lady is experiencing is something called responsive desire. There's two different desire types. There's responsive desire and spontaneous desire. We assume spontaneous desire is, quote, how it's supposed to be. Spontaneous
Mhm.
desire is what we see in movies. It's the like look across the room, you make eye contact, and then you run to the bedroom. Like it's just out
Yeah.
of nowhere, you just want to have sex. About half the population experiences that, and the other half the population experiences what's called responsive desire, meaning that desire for sex grows out of direct stimulation. So
Mhm.
the woman who's saying, if you don't really feel like you want to have sex, you should just do it anyway because you're going to enjoy it in the end. She experiences and doesn't have words for the fact that she has responsive desire, which means that she's not really feeling it at that moment. But she knows that she will grow into enjoying it. That desire is going to grow once she starts, and that she does in fact enjoy sex. That is excellent advice for someone in that situation. It's great
Okay.
advice for someone who enjoys sex and has responsive desire. That is myself. I have
Mhm.
responsive desire. Like that's great advice for me because there are many times when I'm like, I just don't really feel like it. But I know internally, it is
Mhm.
never out of obligation that I'm saying, oh yeah, I should do it. It's out of, I know that my desire will grow for this. And I do want to give myself as a gift to my husband. And I want to unite with him in that way. Now,
Mhm.
on the flip side, that advice is terrible for someone who is not enjoying sex right now and sees sex as a duty. That advice does not work if right now the only reason you're having sex is because, St. Paul said, do not deprive your husband. If that's why you're having sex, don't do it. Because and this is actually really serious. You are not fulfilling your wedding vows when you are coming into sex with that attitude. You are not giving yourself as a full self gift. You have a wall built up. Like it's actually really serious. It's very important that we recognize that like this is not an act in which we come and just like lay there and let him have his way with us. That's not the marital act. The marital act is coming together of two people in joy and love and in uniting to each other and in imaging God, right? And so I kind of push from both sides on that particular
Yes.
issue because a lot of times women just don't even realize they have responsive desire and they do just kind of need that like push. Like it's just like, no,
Mhm.
just say yes. It actually is going to be really, really good for you. And I talk about this a lot. Like if you have said no to your husband the last 5 times that he's asked, let's look at that. Like, why are we saying no? What is the reason behind we're saying no? And are we saying no simply because like we just don't really feel like it, but we are going to ultimately enjoy it? Then yeah, okay, let's start saying yes a little bit more, or let's initiate.
Mhm.
But if you're really like locked into a lot of duty around sex, or, and we haven't really talked about pain yet, but if sex is ever painful,
Mhm.
no, just don't. No, we got to address that. Do not push through pain. Never, ever, ever a good idea. Right. Or if sex is just like, there's a term called like starfishing where you're essentially just kind of lay there like a starfish and you're
Mhm.
not engaging in the act. Like if that is your experience of sex, that is the worst advice ever. Like let's work on marital intimacy as in non-sexual marital intimacy
Mhm.
first. And let's address what's going on in your head about sex. And let's address like, are we spending time in foreplay? Is the act is the act a mutual self-gift, or is it kind of just one-sided? And let's address that one-sidedness. Let's make sure that there are parts that are absolutely for you as the woman, as well as parts that are for your husband. Those kinds of things.
Yes, thank you so much for addressing that. Because exactly, I feel like it's not bad advice, generally
Exactly.
speaking,
Like,
but
yeah.
I think it's person to person. Like, especially when you have an influencer platform, it's just not good broad advice to be giving.
Yeah, it's not across the board. It's absolutely not across the board.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking. But I do want to address pain. Now, I know I had diverted to ask that question. I do want to address pain. I know people specifically will experience pain oftentimes, not often. The most common ones I've seen, like in Facebook groups or people, is when they first get married, they find that sex is very painful, or when they're resuming intimacy after having kids and kind of giving their body a break. Or it can just, I don't know. I guess I don't know many other situations, but I do know that many women have experienced pain with sex. So can you talk about that? You said never push through it. And how can we find solutions to that?
Absolutely. So yeah, pain with sex is an indication that something is abnormal. Sex should never, ever be painful. Some of the worst advice that just exists in our culture, and you might have been told this by your mom, is that, oh, sex will just be painful the first couple of times. No. If sex is painful, that is an indication that something is out of sync. Now, some of the main reasons why sex is painful those first couple of times actually isn't that big of a change that we need to make. Typically, it's because we're either not spending enough time in foreplay or we're not lubricating. Both of those things are necessary for sex to be pain-free, as well as actually enjoyable for the lady. We need adequate lubrication. Only about 20% of women's bodies adequately lubricate on their own. So it is extremely normal to need to add lubrication. I recommend sweet almond or jojoba oil. These oils are, they do the least to mess with your vaginal pH, as opposed to coconut oil will change your vaginal pH like crazy. It can lead to yeast infections. Like people talk about, they're like, oh, it's antimicrobial. I'm like, no, that's not how your vagina works. Like your vagina is stronger than the antimicrobial properties of. Don't use coconut oil, okay? Don't use it.
Yes. Good to know. That's one of the biggest recommendations, so I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, don't do it. So many ladies have come to me and they're like, I get constant yeast infections. I don't understand. And I'm like, what are you using for lube? And it's coconut oil every time. So anyway, so don't use coconut oil. I mean, if you currently use it and it works well for you and you like it and you don't want to change, that's fine if it works for you. I don't recommend trying that if you've never tried it before, because the chances of it not working well for you are not great. You can also, there's no lube that you can't use. There's no moral parameters around lube, other than there are lubes that are also spermicides. So just make sure you're reading what the lube says and make sure you're not getting a spermicide lube. We definitely don't want that. But there's no moral boundaries around lubrication. I recommend check the ingredient label, get something that has as few ingredients as possible. This is an internal part of your body. We don't want to be introducing a lot of extra chemicals and things like that into our body. But of course, whatever you are comfortable with. I like oils because typically you have to apply them once and then they stick around. If you think about putting oil onto your fingers, it doesn't soak in very quickly. It'll stay for a while. And so that lubricative property is going to stick around in your vulva area for a while. If you use a water-based lube, you have to reapply after about 15 minutes. And so that can get cumbersome. I know a lot of women come to me and they're like, I don't like using lube because I don't like, needing to apply mid, whatever. And that's why I like oil, because you can just apply at the very beginning and it'll serve you most likely throughout your entire encounter of foreplay and intercourse and maybe some afterplay as well.
Okay.
So oil is great. Silicone-based lubes also have that same property that they kind of stick around for a while. So again, it's totally up to you what you use for lube, but make sure that you are lubricating. If you're ever feeling any burning, pinching, stinging, or itching, you probably need more lube. Almost across the board, it's lubrication. And don't push through any of that burning or stinging or itching. It's so easy to be like, oh, it's just not that bad. It's not that bad. But when you are feeling those, that is you getting micro tears. It's not oh, this isn't that big of a deal. It's just a little extra friction. No. that is your body micro tearing in that area, which will cause nerve damage, make it harder to orgasm in the future. It can cause prolapse after like lots of micro tearing. So please don't. Please don't push through that. Right. And then the other thing, again, when you're first married, the other like big area of often why sex is painful at first is lack of foreplay. So just making sure that we're spending plenty of time in foreplay, that your body is feeling very open. You're feeling a lot of blood flow into that area. It's feeling warm. Maybe some people explain kind of a tingly feeling. Like you want to be feeling those things. It should be fairly easy for your husband's penis to enter your vagina. You shouldn't feel like you need to push through or like there's a lot of stopping. Like if there's a lot of stopping, that's more lubrication that we need. Lubricant can be applied to your husband's penis. It can be applied to your vulva area. It can be applied internally into your vaginal canal. And sometimes you just have to figure out what amount or, what amount and what areas you need to apply it for yourself. But so those are the big things there. But then the other so once we've addressed those things and we know for certain it's not one of those things and we're still feeling pain, that's when we look to our pelvic floor. It can be hyper or hypotension that is causing pain. It can even be a combo of those two things. After childbirth, it's really common for one area to be loose and one area to be tight. And so that's when seeking out pelvic floor physical therapy is really, really helpful. But then also just recognizing that pelvic floor dysfunction is actually a psychosomatic issue. So your pelvic floor physical therapist is going to work on the physical side, but you got to also work on the mental side. And that's one of the things in my 8-week group program. I actually have a separate little bonus section that is all on how to heal painful sex. And we have some physical exercises to do, but we have a lot of mental exercises to work on anxiety around sex, your thoughts around sex, what's going on in your brain when you think about preparing for sex. Because if you've had a history of experiencing painful sex, that's going to create this cycle of like tensing up before sex because you're afraid of experiencing pain. So
it's a trauma response your body has.
Exactly. And we've got to, so that's why I say don't push through pain, because if you push through pain, then you're going to start creating that trauma response for yourself, which is going to make it harder to heal. If you feel pain, let's address it immediately.
That's so good to know. And I know there's lots of like you said, pelvic floor issues. I didn't even really think about that one. That can cause pain too, or things like endometriosis, and working through that in a physical way. Yes. Yeah. Well, and that's something I've openly shared that I struggle with is endometriosis. But like there's ways to figure out how to work through that and either heal that or how to work in a way that's not painful with that. I want to
Can I share something a little bit on endometriosis real quick? Yeah. So with endometriosis, that is a symptom of endometriosis is painful sex. But I just want to give anyone hope who has endometriosis that there are things that we can do, adjustments that we can make to make it less painful, right? It can be tough to have fully pain-free sex if you have, especially if you have like very widespread endometriosis, but different positions, lots of lubrication, lots of foreplay, all of those things can really help. And then just making sure that it's like lower levels of penetration, not very deep penetration, things like that can help with that pain.
Yes. And I mean, I think some people, might not even realize maybe they discover they have endometriosis or something after they get married and start having sex and they're realizing they have these problems. So I think it's important, like you said, to not just push through it because there's obviously a problem. So for some people, it's just more foreplay or lubrication, but some people there is a deeper problem that needs to be addressed. And I've never actually had excision surgery. Wow, that's a mouthful to say. But there's ways, it's definitely very manageable still. So I'm glad you addressed that. I also want to continue to talk about mechanics because I know something a lot of women struggle with is actually reaching orgasm, and what the church says or doesn't say, because they really leave this very open about what is permissible to get to that point.
Yeah. So orgasm, like we already said, it's an important part of the act, right? John Paul II called it a justice issue if you're not achieving orgasm. So I just really want to encourage you that if you have gotten to a point where you've just kind of given up hope, please don't give up hope on learning how to orgasm. Orgasm is a skill. It is a skill that you need to learn how to do. Unfortunately, our society has decided that apparently it's not a skill and you should just know how to do it. And that's not true. It is a skill you need to learn how to do, and it's going to take some trial and error to figure out the things that bring you pleasure. But essentially what we're trying to do in orgasm is we're trying to get enough blood flow to the vulva area that builds up sexual tension. And then, this is the hard part, ladies, we have to allow the orgasm to come, which means that we have to allow that sexual tension to release. This is a moment of true, total surrender. If you are not feeling safe, you cannot experience an orgasm. And this is why I mentioned earlier that like you are not fully coming to the act if you are coming to it solely out of obligation. And then there is basically zero chance of you being able to experience that orgasm because the whole, like, it is a receiving and we have to allow ourselves to release. Orgasm is a technically, like from a biological standpoint, dangerous thing to do, meaning that you lose total body control for anywhere from 10 to 60 seconds. That's a quote, right? Dangerous thing to do. That's why orgasm is designed for the marital act, for the act with the person that we are most closely united to here on earth, the person that we trust the most, the person that we love the most, right? And we can engage in that, again, quote, dangerous activity because we are in a safe place with a safe person. Sometimes just that knowledge is enough for you to actually experience that orgasm. Just recognizing like, oh, this is something I have to release. I have to let go. I have to unclench my jaw, unclench my hands, let go of all the tension because sexual tension will easily build and it's easy to like clench and hold your breath and clench your teeth and things like that. And so it can be really helpful just as you're feeling that sexual tension build to release it. Another reason why we're not experiencing orgasm is one, we're wanting orgasm to happen during penetration, but we're not actually giving our body enough foreplay for penetration to even be remotely pleasurable for us. So the clitoris is 90% of the clitoris is an internal structure. Every orgasm is a clitoral orgasm. Like it is your clitoris that orgasms. And there are these bulbs of the clitoris that come and wrap around the vaginal canal internally. If those bulbs do not have enough blood in them and they haven't widened enough to actually be able to touch the sides of the vaginal canal internally, then penetration will not be pleasurable. It simply isn't a pleasurable experience because there's no nerves that are close enough to that canal to feel any of what's going on. So if you're feeling where it's like penetration just doesn't feel like anything, let's focus on a lot more manual or oral stimulation of your vulva area prior to intercourse. So as far as like church teaching around orgasm, it is fully permissible for your orgasm to happen within the context of a full sexual act. It shouldn't happen outside of the context of a full sexual act. So it's not permissible for the woman to orgasm like when you're trying to avoid pregnancy. But it is fully permissible for it to happen prior to intercourse. And this is one of the things I really recommend for ladies who have never experienced an orgasm before, is to learn what that feeling is, what that feeling of release is, what that sexual tension buildup really feels like outside of intercourse, because direct stimulation to the clitoral head, which is the little nub that is directly above the urethral opening, direct stimulation to that little nub has 8,000 nerve endings on it. It's more than any other human body part, male or female. So it's got a whole lot of nerve endings on it. A direct stimulation to that is what's going to build up that sexual tension. And so it can be a lot easier during foreplay with your husband manually or orally stimulating you to learn that process. And then, if desired, you can shift that, right? Shift that orgasm to happening simultaneously during penetration, which a lot of couples are kind of seeking out, right? And so I like to recommend just really like understanding what is going on in the anatomy. And this is one of the things that I teach in my 8-week group coaching program. We've got a whole section on anatomy. And it's just like, no, you weren't taught this. And it's okay. It's okay that you weren't taught this, right? I can't go into depth right now because it would take like 30 minutes.
Right.
But, it's just understanding like, here's all the things and here's how they feel and how you might consider touching. There's areas of the vulva that like they're gonna like more pressure, and there's areas that are gonna like potentially like pinching and pulling in gentle ways, but like that's the areas respond to that. And some areas respond to gentler pressure or more pressure, and the mons pubis, like just that's where your hair grows. Like direct pressure down from your husband's palm can be extremely stimulating. And so it's like we don't understand these things because we were truly never taught them. And no one from a Catholic perspective is teaching them. Like I've gotten all of these from very secular resources that I do not recommend, which is why I'm filtering them through a Catholic lens and presenting them in a way that's totally in line with church teaching. But essentially, like, your orgasm is good. Catechism 2362. Sexuality is a source of joy and pleasure. The spouses do no evil in seeking out that pleasure. Like that's in the catechism. This is an important part. This is a good thing. And it's going to take some experimentation. It's going to take some trial and error. And it can be a little overwhelming, which is why I do this 8-week group coaching program. And I'm able to, I don't just do self-paced courses. I used to do self-paced courses. And I was like, no, like for a lot of ladies, we need to actually walk together and in a group setting. Anything like it's so easy. So many women are like, I don't want to talk about this in a group setting. And I'm like, then you definitely need to talk about it in a group setting because the devil wants us to hide these issues. He wants us to think that we're isolated in this. He wants us to think that we're the only ones who are struggling in this way. And I can't remember the scripture verse right now, but it's like anything that is brought to the light then becomes light, right? Like it's when we hide our issues that they continue to be issues and the devil can continue mixing up that pot and making it worse and worse. It's when we bring them to the light, when we recognize that we're in a group with 30 other women who are all experiencing the same issues. And oh my gosh, I'm not alone. I'm not alone in not knowing how to orgasm. I'm not alone in feeling a little bit used by sex. And why is that? Why do I feel a little bit used? And I'm not alone in feeling totally awkward and ashamed to try to talk about sex with my husband. And I'm not alone in experiencing pain with sex. And I'm not alone in not even understanding what the clitoris is, right? Like I'm not alone in these things. These are all things I felt very alone in. Very alone in.
Well, I think it's hard because you're not, I mean, in like sex ed classes in school, they're not going to go this in depth. And I honestly don't think they necessarily should because that's not really their place. But so I guess my follow-up question to that is how can we, because you're doing such great things for women of this generation, but how can we, for our kids, for our daughters, I don't know, like, do you have these conversations with your kids about like the literal mechanics of how to make sure that sex feels good? Like, what does that look like when it's passing on this knowledge to future women and future men?
Yeah, that's something I contemplate a lot because I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and an 18-month-old. So obviously I am not talking to them about the mechanics of sex right now, right? But one of the things that we are doing is we are using proper language for everything. My son uses the word penis. He, he'll tell me if something itches or hurts or whatever, right? My daughter knows vagina and vulva and, and we use direct terminology to explain those things, as well as understanding like, okay, these aren't words that we just like use willy-nilly. Like these are, if you have a question about them, we talk about them, in a private, comfortable setting inside the home, right? But I think really the key, and I grew up with I had one talk in 5th grade and then I had another one in high school. There were 2 times that my
Yeah.
mom sat down with me, right? And I think the key is that this is a trickle conversation. And this is something that's just going to slowly grow, right? And, so as my daughter gets a little bit older, when we get closer to 9, 10 years old, I'll start talking to her about her cycle and what to expect and how this is good and normal. I think Christina Valenzuela with Pearl and Thistle, she has some excellent education materials for daughters about cycles and things like that, and sons, actually. And I and so then I think as you grow further into high school, again, if we've had this base of really normalizing discussion about pretty intimate topics, then we can continue to trickle in that conversation. And I think one of the most helpful things that we can give our daughters and our sons is an honest, sorry, what is the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, no, you're fine.
An honest witness of an enjoyable, holy sex life. Truly. And so what that means for you right now is, do you have an enjoyable, holy sex life right now? Because if you don't, it's going to be really hard to teach your daughter or your son to have an enjoyable, holy sex life that glorifies God. And so let's work on you right now. And let's get to a point where you are really enjoying it. And it is able to be that unitive and procreative act that is glorifying God, truly glorifying God through your bodies and renewing your wedding vows. And when you can get to a point where sex is that good, wonderful thing, then it's going to be almost natural to then be talking to your 13-year-old daughter like, oh my gosh, sex, yeah, it's a real thing. And there are kids your age that are having it. Mom and dad we have sex too. And it's a really good thing. And it's really good because we're married, because we've been able to journey together, because we can be vulnerable to each other in this way. And I just love it. And it's so good, right? Because when sex is something that is taboo and hidden away, and your 13-year-old daughter is like, well, mom doesn't want to talk about it, so obviously I got to go talk to somebody else about it, right? And then they're going to be taught from the world. And we don't want them to be taught from the world. We want them to be taught from us. But in order for us to be able to teach them, we've got to get over our own hurdles, right? And so I truly, if this is speaking to you right now, let's work on your sex life. Come listen to Reclaiming Catholic Intimacy. Come join the 8-week group coaching program the next time I open it up. I open it a couple of times a year. Let's figure your stuff out so that you can then pass that on to your daughter and or your son. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm only thinking about my daughter right now. Both.
We're talking about women. Yeah.
Yeah. and so then they can experience enjoyable, healthy, holy sex lives as well.
That's beautiful. And I mean, just like in any aspect, helping yourself get better, whether it's your finances or your anxiety or whatever, will truly be the best thing you can do for your kids, because then you can pass on a healthy relationship with that, whether it's money or with sex, to them. So that is such great advice. We are running the clock, so I know we need to wrap up this show, but if there's one thing you can leave every woman listening with, what would it be?
My goodness. I would say sex is so good. And you probably were never told that sex is so good, and sex glorifies God. It is our opportunity to be co-creators with him. And if we can get to a point where we as Catholics really embrace that truth, we're going to change the world. Absolutely change the world. Sister Lucia wrote in a letter that the final battle between good and evil is going to be over marriage and the family. Your sex life is the final battleground, truly. So if it feels like a battle, if it feels like it's so hard, it actually makes sense, because you're literally you're on the front lines fighting God's battle. You're right there with Adam and Eve, staring the serpent in the head and deciding whether or not to take that apple. You're right there with them. You are at that final battle. And so just let's embrace the goodness of it. Let's enjoy it.
I love that. That's perfect. All right, Ellen, where can everyone find you? Because I know they're going to want more conversations after this.
So my podcast is called Reclaiming Catholic Intimacy. You can find it wherever you find podcasts. My website is reclaimingcatholicintimacy.com, so should be pretty easy to find. And then I'm on Instagram at Ellen Holloway _.
Love that. And you actually have a free download for our listeners too if they go to reclaimingcatholicintimacy.com/CWP for the Catholic Women Podcast. So thank you so much for being here, Ellen. And thank you also so much to our show sponsors, Bono the Good Boy, Mangio Arts, and Contemporary Saints. If this episode was helpful for you, please share it with 1 or 2 women in your life. Just send it to them and say, I was thinking about you today. And I know it will bless them in so many ways. So thank you all for being here, and I will see you in 2 weeks.